All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast. As always, presented by our good friends over at ScentLock. It is coming up on my favorite time of the year, late season. I love hunting in the late season. It's coming up on my favorite time of year. I will be this time next week in camp with Chuck Adams in Oklahoma. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing podcasts there from Oklahoma and bringing them to you. So it's going to be a fun, exciting week. Going to be putting out a lot of content with Chuck in camp about the new bows and his thoughts on the new bows and what he likes, what he doesn't like about them. So make sure and follow along with Bear Archery as they're putting out all that content. I am joined today by one of my mentors, by one of the guys who helped get me started, Mr. Adam Leichner, my brother-in-law, a good friend of mine, a man that I am excited to talk to today. And we're talking about his influence on me, but also those who influenced him and kind of what that structure looks like and how we should all be working to influence other people and get people involved in hunting. Guys, it's a good episode, so stay right here, tuned in.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
I'm an arrow junkie. I can't help it. I love building arrows. It's my passion. I can remember growing up, my dad, it was sitting there sharpening knives. He loved to do that. For me, it's building arrows. It's sharpening broadheads. It's fletching arrows. It's playing with arrow weights and FOCs and all that good stuff. I love going out in my bow shop and messing with arrows. A good friend of mine, Dan, he started a company called Arrow Junkie. First off, what caught my attention was the incredible looking apparel. If you don't like Sasquatch carrying a bow, dragging a deer, there's something wrong with you. But as an arrow junkie, he sells me all the equipment that I need to build my own arrows, from arrow saws, arrow squares, arrow jigs, everything that I need to build my own arrows. He's got all the fletchings, all the wraps, all the glues, everything, broadheads, fill tips, inserts, outserts, everything you need to build your own arrow. Also, he puts out some really good information on how to build your own arrows. Guys, it doesn't have to be difficult, and it really doesn't even have to be that expensive. You can build an entire arrow building kit for $400 or so. And then all of a sudden, you can build the best arrows that you can possibly have because you're building them yourself. You know them. You're putting the time and effort into them. So, guys, I would highly encourage you to check out Arrow Junkie for all your arrow building needs. He's phenomenal. They're phenomenal. Go check it out.
All right, Adam. So before we jump to the nuts and bolts of this, give us an introduction to yourself, man. Is this the first time you've ever been on Bear Archery's podcast, right?
I think so. Yeah, we did that old podcast together.
Yeah,
a couple times, but yeah, it's been a long time. So introduction to me. My name is Adam Leichner. As Dylan said, I'm his brother-in-law, married to his sister, and so I've known Dylan since he was just a little guy. And we have, my wife, Megan, and I have 2 kids, Elijah and Ivy Grace. And
Elijah's become a big buck killer too.
He has, man. He's taken off with it. He's ate up. He loves
it. It's
man.
awesome, dude. I love watching that.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, the first deer that kid killed, man, it was the craziest thing because we had been practicing with the rifle. We went out, and the first trip out, he shot at a couple does and missed. And he just got real nervous, got excited. We had him real close and he missed, and he was all discouraged. And then we went out the next weekend, and this big buck came out and he dropped him. I was like, can't believe that was that kid's first deer. So it's mounted above his bed now.
A nice deer too.
It is a good deer. So yeah, we have 2 kids, and I'm a worship and young adult pastor in Wichita, and love to hunt, man. We share that interest together, and we've gotten to do a lot of that together through the years. So,
well, not to get too spiritual on the show, but that's what, if I was to give a true introduction about my brother-in-law, Adam, it would be that he's one of my influencers in hunting, really helped get me started, but also one of my heroes of the faith. So,
wow.
Thank you. I'm excited to just talk about kind of your journey because, hunting meant a lot more to you than maybe some because, as I was talking this morning with your wife, my sister, we were just talking about how hunting, you lost your dad at a young age. So hunting was really like an outlet for you, if you will. So just kind of want to get into that. But yeah, Adam was, how old was I when you started dating Megan? 12, 13?
Yeah, you would have been in that ballpark.
young teen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 12 or 13 right in there. 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah, probably. So for those of you who've listened to the podcast, you know that my dad got me started hunting at a young age. And, he's really lit that fire and took me out a lot. But it was rifles. My dad had kind of fallen out of the bow hunting world. He's back in it now. But just kind of fallen out of that. And so we did a lot of rifle hunting. And Adam, when I remember you coming around, you were the cool guy. Like you were.
Yes.
You were.
Let's go.
I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, you were strong, athletic, handsome. Like,
thank you.
For a young teenage boy, I'm like, dude, this guy's awesome. And I remember you had a blacked out Matthews Z7. Mm-hmm. Like I remember that
Z7
bow.
Extreme.
And I used to just think like, dude, this guy is legit. Like this guy, everything about you with that bow. Like I just remember looking at that bow and being like, dude, this is so cool. Like
that's awesome.
I don't know how it works. I don't understand all the technology behind it, but this is cool. And I had shot my dad's old like 87 bow like a lot, but I'd never seen I'd never been around new cool bows, like cutting edge technology, fast shooting bows. Yeah. And I was just like, dude, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And so anyways, fast forward, and I still didn't really get into it a lot. But then I was in college, just miles from your house. And so got to spend a lot more time around you and with my sister and obviously my nephew and just watching you shoot in the backyard. I'm like, this is so cool. And so, I don't think I've ever even told this story, but I remember wanting to get into bow hunting and I didn't have money. I mean, I was a poor college kid. I didn't have money. And so you literally funded me the money to buy my first bow. And that meant a lot to me. Still does. Like, I just think back and crap, I'm going to cry. I just think back and I'm like, dude, I wouldn't even be here. Like if it wasn't for somebody willing to say, here's $200 for your first bow. And I mean,
that's so cool.
Even to you, like a young married man in ministry, like $200 wasn't just chump change, but you were willing to say, you know what, I want to see you do this. And so you funded me the money for my first bow and I'm quite literally here because of the investment that you made.
Man, that's so cool.
My living is literally in the outdoor industry, in the bow hunting space because of you being willing to say, here's $200 for your first bow. And so I'm so thankful for that. But the way that unfolded was it was crazy. We literally sighted that bow in the headlights of your truck at your house. And I was brand new to this, and again, I had shot bows like my dad's old bow, but it had like 5% let off and I couldn't shoot it like I needed to. I was a little kid shooting a 70-pound bow and so it was the first time somebody was really teaching me form and how to shoot a bow, and you're teaching me in the headlights of a truck. And and I had called back. I had called back home. This was in Oklahoma City.
There was a little redneckery involved.
Yeah. I had called back home, and I just said, hey, Dad. Well, actually, I called a gentleman. There was a guy, and he always had this cornfield. And it was really in the middle of town, but had this cornfield behind an auction lot. And so everybody saw this cornfield. It wasn't like tucked back anywhere. And everybody had always asked, and we had always asked, can we hunt that cornfield? No, I can't let anybody hunt that cornfield. No, it's right behind my place of business. If I let somebody, everybody's going to want to. And so, but I was in college. And so I called back and I called Mr. Mike. And I said, hey, Mr. Mike, I said, I gave him the whole, I'm studying college, man. I'm trying to be a minister. I don't have any time to
Gave
hunt.
Him the sob story.
Don't have any time to hunt. Don't have any money. But I'm going to come back and hunt. Can I hunt that cornfield? And he just goes, yeah, you probably could. And I was like, what? And so I just called my dad.
Yes. Let's go.
I called down. I'm like, Dad, I just got permission to hunt Mr. Mike's cornfield. And he said, no, you didn't, dude. I said, Dad, I'm going to be home tomorrow morning and I'm hunting that cornfield. And he was just like ecstatic. He's like, well, I'll go out and get a tree stand hung up. So Dad went out and put up a tree stand and we sighted that bow in, and I come back home. The very first set, I see a bunch of deer, nothing impressive, but I see a bunch of deer, and it was just a crazy cool set. And actually, your mentor, Jared Vickers, was in town that weekend for a youth rally, a youth retreat.
I forgot that. Yeah, that's right.
And so I had been like texting back and forth with Jared, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm going to be hunting, blah, blah. And so that I go back for the evening set. and I shoot a buck. And I remember calling you and you're like, no, you didn't. Like, no way. Like, he didn't have any faith in me, obviously.
Listen, I could not believe that this was true because, like you said, like you had just gotten this bow, like you'd shot it a handful of times.
Yeah, we sighted it the
Like-
night before in the headlights of a truck.
And like, I mean, you were shooting it good. Like I felt confident that you could hit a deer, you know?
Yeah.
But you'd also just got this spot and he calls me and it's early season, super early. I don't remember.
Oh, it was like 98 degrees. Yeah.
It was like mid-September.
Yeah,
it was like right when Arkansas had opened that year. So like Kansas wasn't even open. Oklahoma wasn't open. Oklahoma opens usually 1st of October. And so I'm not even like in deer hunting mode.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm going home. I'm going to hunt this weekend. I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Good luck. You know? And he calls me and I'm sitting at the dinner table with his sister, my wife. And Dylan's like, dude, I just shot a huge buck. And I'm like, yeah, right. Like, he's just messing with me. He's like, I'm serious. He's like, I just shot a huge buck. And I'm like, no, you didn't. He's like, I promise. And then he sends me pictures and sure enough, he really did. His second time sitting, he's the luckiest punk there ever was.
Yeah. And honestly, my dad didn't believe me either because I called him and like I said, there was a youth rally going on. So he was at the church and around a lot of other guys. And I just said, Dad, I just shot a big buck. And, up to that point, we did most of our hunting down south, like far south Arkansas. You've been down there, the deer chocolate labs, I mean, and so he really didn't associate like big buck with like what I had killed. And still to this day, like it's the smallest deer on my wall by far. But for Arkansas, it was an old deer. But for Arkansas, it was a good deer. I mean, it's probably, and I never got it measured, but I'm going to guess 115 inches, maybe 110. But for a first archery buck, like, I wasn't lying. And so,
dude, I shot a single spike. It had one on one side and one broken off. And
the first deer,
I was thrilled to death.
The first deer I shot, even with a rifle, of course, we were down in South Arkansas, and I was probably 12, and I even picked that up and carried it out. I mean, at 12, so it probably weighed 60 pounds. But anyway, so I called Dad, and he comes out, and we're looking for it, and we don't find anything. We find half my arrow, but we don't find any blood. And I'm like, Dad, I'm telling you, it was a perfect shot. Like I promise you, it was a perfect shot. Now I was only 18 years old and never shot a deer with a bow before. But I'm like, Dad, I mean, wherever you taught me to shoot him with a rifle, perfect shot, dude. And he was like, okay, but bow hunting's a little different, son. I mean, if they duck at all, you might have made a perfect shot, but he ducked. Like,
right.
And I'm like, Dad, I'm telling you, I saw where the arrow went. I saw when he was running away. I saw the arrow in him. It was a perfect shot, but we don't find anything. And I told him, I'm like, Dad, this is where he went in the woods. This is where he crossed the creek. This is where he come up out of the creek. And so we go over there. Sure enough, you could tell just the water and, wet going up. And I'm like, I'm telling you, Dad, like that, it was a perfect shot, dude. And he just doesn't believe me. Like, he never said that, but you could just tell like he was losing faith quick.
Yeah.
And so he brings out Steve Reeves and Isaac came out there, and we're all looking for this buck for hours. And I'm like, Dad, I promise, dude, like I'm not leaving because I know that was a good hit.
The redneck brigade tracking through the woods.
So Steve's got blood lights and all this stuff. And I'm like, Dad, I promise it was a good hit, but there's not one drop of blood anywhere.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like literally somebody, I don't even remember who did it, but somebody shines a light and all they saw was a tail, but he had just ducked into super thick cover.
Just like dove in there.
Yeah,
basically.
just dove in there and all you could see was his tail.
Yeah.
But he literally went past the creek. He was 10 yards. So from where I shot him to where he ran was like 60 yards maybe.
Man.
But just the way the arrow went in, plugged everything. I didn't get a pass through, obviously, because his arrow broke off. But meat plugged the hole, fat plugged the hole, just didn't bleed.
Yeah.
Perfect shot. He ran 60 yards.
I've had a few like that.
But yeah, I was just like, I told you. Like
I knew I hit him good.
And I remember when we get that deer, he's like, well, I honestly didn't think you killed a big buck. But sure enough, it was a big buck.
I still, I could not believe that.
Oh, and if you listen, just so you know, I had Austin on last week, so it wasn't a good episode. I'm just kidding. Me and Austin, I'm sure you've heard his story, but we shot bucks on the same day, both on November 9th. So I literally called Austin, or I
was
texted
jealous.
Austin, said, "Hey, I just shot a buck, dude, with Tucker in the blind." And he's like,
Yeah.
"I just shot a buck too." And so I was like, "Dude, we got to do a
Awesome.
podcast." And so I was with Austin last week, and we talked about. I told the story of my dad wanting to shoot a deer, but he was peeing in a bottle. And so he couldn't shoot the deer. So fast forward the next night, I'm like, "Dad, there was another buck with this deer that was bigger."
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
And so we literally got the next night. We had trampled all through these woods.
Same
looking for this deer.
stand,
Same
yeah.
stand.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the tree. It was no double set. So I'm like in the tree and that sure enough, that same buck that was with the buck the night before comes back in. And I'm like, "Dad, here he comes." And he's like, "I'm peeing right now, dude. I can't." And I'm like, "Dad, you're going to have to put that thing away, dude." And he said, I said, "Pinch it off." He said, "I'm old. I can't do that." And that deer's literally coming.
Oh,
and so the deer's like 40 yards. And Dad's still peeing in a bottle. I'm like, "Dad, get ready." And he's like, "I'm trying." And so I told that story last week, but this was literally the night after. I'm like, "Dad, there was a buck with that deer." So I did screw my dad up though, because mechanicals were on the rave, still are, but like that was really like when they were just really
starting to get really popular.
really getting in there.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, Dad, me and Adam, that bow came with some of these rages, some of these broadheads." I'm like, "Dude, you saw what it did to that buck. Like, you need to shoot these, dude."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "All right." And so he screws them onto his arrows. Well, he was shooting an old 87.
Yeah.
He was still shooting that same 87.
Probably
bow
shooting 200 feet per
maybe.
second.
And so he literally hits that deer and it just stops. And he looks at me and says, "You idiot." He said, "I've been shooting the same old 3-blade broadheads for 25 years,
Oh man.
for 50 years, and they've always worked. And I put on your stupid little heads and they don't go through at all." So we didn't kill the deer, but needless to say, dad is now a mechanical like fanatic because he's upgraded bows and can actually shoot them now. But that didn't ever register with me. Like, "Oh yeah, your bow is not putting out the kinetic energy to shoot this
open this thing up and actually push it through."
So it was bad. But yeah. So Adam has always been the guy for me that and you guys have heard me talk. Used to film a TV show from Osseo that was with Adam. So he's always been the guy that has pushed me in archery. So I appreciate that.
Man, that's super cool. Yeah, I had forgot that we helped you get that first bow.
Yeah.
But
did I ever pay you back for that? Too late now.
No, you owe me now, man. Now that you're Mr. Bow hunting celebrity.
Yeah. Now, but your story, like I said, your dad passed away at a young age, and so you didn't have that dad to, drag you along in the woods. So you had a gentleman by the name of Jared that was really influential. So talk to me about all that, man. How'd that all start for you?
So, yeah, my dad passed away when I was young. I was 9 years old. It was actually a couple weeks before my 10th birthday. And my dad had been like perfectly healthy, amazing, godly man. And he got sick, and they started running some tests and found out that he had cancer really bad. It had metastasized and spread through his whole body. And so they started some really aggressive treatment, but 4 months later, he passed away. And as a kid, I mean, that absolutely rocked my world. It was really hard to kind of understand that pain and wrestle through all of that. One of the things that was amazing through that time, I mean, God was just very gracious and like helped carry me through that. But one of the things that was super cool is how hunting was a big part of my healing. And I never would have known that. I grew up as a kid. I love the outdoors. I love being outside. My mom would tell you, I mean, we lived in the city, but I was like outside, like as long as I could be every day, I always wanted to be out there. And, we would do some like hiking and camping and stuff like that as a kid. And I always loved that. Loved fishing with my papa. But my dad wasn't a big hunter at all. And, but my uncle, who is my dad's oldest brother, my Uncle Mike, huge hunter. Man, you should see his office, dude. He's got every kind of big game and the biggest of every species. It's crazy. Deer killing fool. But he, after my dad passed away, he kind of took me under his wing. It was actually really cool because it's kind of the whole like passing hunting on idea and tradition. Because similar to how I helped you get your first bow, he let me mow his yard, use his mower all summer long, and he would pay me. And I saved up and I bought my first deer rifle when I was 12.
That's cool.
So he had a nice like riding lawnmower. He could have easily mowed his own lawn, but he paid me to do it, probably overpaid me to do it because I was using his equipment and everything.
Yeah.
And I saved up, bought my first deer rifle that summer. And so he started investing in me. And then Jared Vickers, the one that you mentioned, he was actually my youth pastor. My dad had been the youth pastor at the church, and Jared helped in youth. And then Jared took over once my dad passed away. And both my Uncle Mike and Jared really invested in me. And Jared my Uncle Mike bow hunted some back then, but was a big rifle hunter. And so he actually helped me get my first deer with a rifle. And I shot a pretty nice buck, my first one. And then Jared helped me get my first bow. I think I paid him $20 for this bow. It was a PSE. It was old school. I still have it actually. The cams on that thing are about this big around. And so I got that bow, started shooting, started learning mechanics. And anyways, I remember, so my first season when I was 12, I shot one with a rifle. My second season, I was 13 years old, and I got to shoot my first deer with a bow. Like I said, it was a broken off spike. I was more excited over that deer, and I was hooked on bow hunting like forever.
Have you shot one with a rifle since?
A few, but I don't get that excited when I shoot with a rifle, man. I'm ate up with bow hunting, man. And so that really, like, one of the things that I found is that the woods, like being in the outdoors, was super healing for me. Like, it's peaceful, it's quiet, it's a good place to reflect. You learn so much when you're out there. Learn about yourself. You learn about the Lord, I feel like, but it's just like healing. For me, it's just a healing place. And so as a kid, like, that was one of my escapes, I think, not from reality, but escapes from like pain, and a good, just safe place for me to go. And I think you really learn a lot about just, being a man. There's a lot of masculine energy and like pursuing wild game, hunting, kind of getting to those core things, and just being in the woods, learning, how to be tough, how to sit through really, really cold, when you're a young kid, and I had whatever kind of cheap camo I could piece together, and cotton socks, and, 50 layers, and I sweated going in, and I'm sitting there freezing to death, but you learn, I'm going to tough this out. I'm going to sit through this. And then occasionally you get rewarded with, the prize, which is really exciting, and get to share that experience with friends and family. And so, hunting's always been just super special to me. And because of the way that it helped me heal, and not only did my Uncle Mike and Jared, teach me about hunting, but they taught me a lot about becoming a man, stepping into manhood. And then I'll also say that, so my mom got remarried, and my stepdad, he's my second dad. He came into my life, and he loves to bird hunt. So he's big upland.
He's ate up with it.
Game. Yeah. He loves to pheasant quail hunt. And so he got me into that, and I'll never forget. So, man, it was so special. I was getting really into hunting. I think this was I was 12 years old, which back then, that was like the first year you could hunt in Kansas. Like, you could take your hunter safety. So he took me and sat in hunter safety class with me for like 2 days of 8-hour classes or whatever it was, you know, and I got my hunter safety. And then I remember he is a businessman. He's a banker, and he was acting like he was on a phone call, and he's on his phone at the house, and like he's like, "Hey," he said, "I left my briefcase in the front seat of my pickup. Would you go out there and get it for me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I took his keys and went out there, and I opened the door, and there's a brand new shotgun, Remington 870 Express Youth.
It's the best shotgun
pump
there is.
action. Oh, dude, yeah, they're unbeatable.
I love
Sitting
that. I
there.
went to a shoot today, and all these guys have like $10,000 guns, like breaking open, and I'm like,
Yeah.
got my 870 pump, and I'm like, yeah, but this thing's never failed me before.
That's right, man. That action is it's
Yeah.
gonna work every time. Yeah, dude, I was so excited. I don't know if I've ever been more excited over a gift. Like, that was incredible. So I had a rifle and a shotgun, and then I got a sweet $20 bow.
I was
set,
a
dude.
dumb enough little kid to walk back in, but like, I didn't see the briefcase. I'm like, there was a gun in there though. I didn't see a briefcase.
So I got to shoot my first quail that year too. So I got hooked on, man. Yeah. The outdoors, it's been incredible. I love hunting. Bow hunting is really like my passion. I love the challenge of it. I love the skill it takes. You know, you have to really prepare yourself, put in the work ahead of time. And, man, it's just a fun endeavor. I love it.
See, I just think that, and not to say it's completely gone, because there are definitely still guys out there that, invest in a younger generation, but, used to, for people of that generation, like my dad and Uncle Gary and not Gary,
Uncle Mike
and Jared, they were desperately looking, like they wanted to invest in people.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard because I mean, I get it. Like, I get the idea of like, yeah, but if I take Tucker hunting, then I don't get to hunt.
It lowers your chances of success significantly.
Right. But like Jared was like investing not only in you, but
tons of guys.
I mean, Grant and all those guys.
And he created monsters.
I
mean, we're all ate up with it now.
But like, I've thought about that before. I'm like, I am a youth pastor, so I have access to all these kids.
Right.
And there's so many kids that like, they talk to me and they're like, "Oh, dude, that's so cool, man. You went on a bear hunt." And I'm like, they're showing interest. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then I just move on with life. And I'm like, there was a chance,
right,
to invest in a kid.
Sure.
And sometimes it's a lot harder than others. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about Coda before, a young man in my youth group that has severely special needs, but he wants to hunt. And I'm like, this is going to be difficult. Like,
right.
I'm going to have to give up a lot of my hunting time.
Sure.
I have to take him to one of my spots.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to, and then it becomes difficult because if one of my target bucks come out, like, I got to let him shoot. I can't say, "No, dude, I want to shoot that deer." That becomes difficult.
Yeah. No,
but for that generation, dude, they looked for opportunities.
Right.
They looked for young men to say, "Hey, have you ever been hunting before? Let's go."
Right.
And I think that's why there's such a decrease in hunting now. Everybody's talking about how, we're going to lose our opportunities. There's too many hunters now. There's too many. Well, no, quite literally the opposite. I mean, as of 10 years ago, our license sales are down tremendously.
Yeah.
We saw an uptick through COVID, but license sales are down tremendously. And that's because people have lost the desire to invest in the next generation of hunters.
Yeah.
Now, you might be listening to this and thinking like, well, I take my son hunting. Okay. What about the neighborhood kid? Like, what about the kid who walks by and sees you shooting and goes, "Oh, dude, that's such a cool thing you're doing there."
The kid who doesn't have a dad. Yeah. The kid whose dad's passed away.
Absolutely.
Or dad's not in his life.
Absolutely. And I've just thought back, there's so many times like, like we'll have a friend over, Harper will have a friend over, Hayden will have a friend over, and I'll be shooting like, "That's so cool. Like, thanks. I appreciate that." And I just lost the opportunity to say, "Would you like to try?"
Yeah.
I've got, we can lower a bow down for you. We can try it.
Yeah.
There's been so many opportunities where I just miss it. And, it's these times that I start reflecting back on that. And I think, man, I need to make a more conscious effort to invest in the next generation of hunters.
Sure.
Because it's not enough because there are so many dads out there that aren't teaching kids how to hunt. There are so many grandpas out there who can't teach their kids how to hunt anymore because of age, and I have the ability to help them, and I don't.
Yeah. I think one of the cool things, especially with archery, but firearms are a similar thing, is that it's a really great way to get people introduced to the outdoors. And like for you, I know you've taught a lot of people how to shoot bows. And even if people never jump into hunting, archery
Yeah,
in and of itself
still can be that outlet,
something that somebody
healing,
gets really passionate about. And that's a great way to introduce people. But I do think with like what you're saying, looking for opportunities to like mentor people, look for those kids, those situations. And a lot of times even like troubled kids, they just need an outlet. Like they just need like somebody to care about them and something to put their
attention
and energy towards. And also like when you just show somebody that you care about them and you give them time and point them in a direction of something they could be interested in, and that you just get so many great opportunities. Like what happened for me is like they were able to like teach me about life, teach me about being a man, teach me about growing up and maturing and, learning a lot of these,
life lessons
that are going to follow me. And so I think often, mentoring in that way, like it provides avenues for those kind of conversations to happen that otherwise wouldn't, or they wouldn't give you the time of day, and there's no shortage of kids that are needing that. And so, yeah.
Well, and I think too, part of the problem is like social media has changed that structure a lot, because we do now have influencers, and we just think like, oh, hunting 101.
Yeah, you are one, dude.
Yeah, hunting 101 podcast will influence them. I don't need to. Like,
right.
No, like I don't have an influence, man. I'm not a big hunter, but you have something to pass on. Like,
yeah.
And that's why, kind of the 3 pillars of this podcast is hunt, grow, inspire.
Yeah.
And the reason I kind of wanted to structure it that way is because I just want everybody to understand, like, even if you've only shot 1 deer, like even if you've just started and you've only shot 1 deer, you still have something that the person behind you doesn't have that you can pass on.
Sure.
There's always something you can be teaching. Like, hey, I don't know a lot, but here's what I do know. I can't get you to, be the next Levi Morgan, but I can teach you how to shoot. I can teach you how to load. Like, I can teach you what your sights are. I can teach you how to, I can teach you the basics. And then we can learn together. Then we can continue to grow together. And I just think that gone are those days, because, we just think like, well, there's so many influencers. They can get all the information on how to shoot a bow off YouTube. They can get
right.
But again, it's that difference in the connect of like, hey, I care
personal
about you.
Connection.
Like I want to invest in you personally.
Absolutely.
And that's why like it's been laid heavy on my heart with Coda, at least to get him out there.
Yeah.
And it's even been a connection with him and his dad. Like
that's cool.
Or with me and with me and his dad, and now him and his dad, because his dad was like, well, if Coda's going to learn, I'm going to learn.
That's
so
awesome.
Like, I've had both him and his dad over.
Sure.
Just to, I'm walking his dad through with his son, like helping them both. And now they get to connect up on that level. And so it's just like, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn because I'm doing a poor job of it, because I've had so many opportunities that I've lost, but it's just something that really I've been trying to do better of using, and not only a platform of a podcast or social media, but personal connection of like, hey, would you like to do this?
Yeah.
Let's get you started. And I understand, like, trust me, I get it. I don't have 30 leases. I can't just say, well, I'm not going to hunt this property so you can have that property.
Yeah.
I don't have that ability.
You don't have unlimited opportunities.
Yeah. And I was actually just telling Chrissy, I've only been hunting, and we're going into December, and I've only set probably 7 times.
Yeah.
5 of which were with Tucker. Like, so
yeah,
I got, I don't just get to hunt every day, contrary to some people's beliefs. I don't get to just hunt every day. And so it's hard to give up those opportunities.
Sure.
But again, like, I hope one day I have the influence on somebody to where, what if they are the next Chuck Adams? Like, what if one day they're looking back holding a new world record on the Boone and Crockett stage or on the Pope and Young stage saying, yeah, but I had Dylan Ray to help me.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't anything special. He didn't, or what if they're the next, Joe Rogan to make the biggest splash about hunting ever because they turn out to be some famous person and they say, yeah, but I had a guy named Dylan Ray that invested in me.
Yeah.
And that's just what, you got to think like that. Like, yeah, they might not ever turn into something great, but what if they do? Like,
Look for that.
What if they change the world for hunting because you changed their world?
Yeah. Look for that 18-year-old punk college kid that needs a
100%.
bow and help him shoot in the headlights of your truck.
Absolutely,
and
dude.
Teach him to love it. And look, he's got his own podcast now.
Yeah.
This guy's rocking it.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go back. You said something interesting, and I've had this conversation with other people. I think my dad's dead wrong. I don't think he's right on this.
Okay.
Because you mentioned, and I was in the same boat as you, you've got camo sweatpants and wool socks on that weigh 10 pounds because they're wet, and you're freezing to death, and your fingers are never going to work right after that because you were in 5 degrees with no gloves on. Like,
yeah.
And Dad said one time, he said, dude, he said, Tucker's got more money in hunting gear than I've got. And he's like, you're not doing right by that boy because you're not teaching him to struggle. And I'm like, I disagree because, we have so much technology now. We have so much, so many clothing companies make great gear for kids now. Like, they don't have to struggle anymore. Now, I'm not saying that if they do face the cold and the bitterness and this sucks that they're going to quit, but it happened to my brother. Dad took Aaron out on his first hunt and it was 10 degrees and snowing. And Aaron's like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. Would that have changed if he was comfortable? Like, would that have changed if he was in good gear? And so I'm curious to know, like, do you pamper Elijah in the woods or do you make him struggle?
I've never really thought of it in those terms. I think honestly, what I encourage is you just get people out in the woods, like in whatever you can.
Yeah.
Like if you have like the means and you're able to, buy the most expensive gear, do it. If you can't afford that, and that would be like a barrier for entry for you, then I would say, like, honestly, it doesn't even have to be camo, like bundle them up. Like we sometimes, like, what we'll do is buy like a bigger size camo jacket, especially kids are growing fast, and if budget's tight or whatever, you can get like a bigger size jacket and then wear like their regular coat underneath.
Yeah.
And I do try to like think through, if I'm taking a kid hunting, like early season's a really great time to like introduce kids and, wives or different people. Yeah. Like where it's comfortable and you can be maybe even too hot. Like, that's usually easier sitting than when you're freezing to death. But then, I try to think through like, hey, maybe not going to be an all day sit this time, that kind of stuff. But I would say, buy the best gear that you can afford, but don't let gear be the reason that you don't go in the woods. Like,
100%.
And so same thing with like, if you can't afford a brand new flagship bow, like buy a cheap used one and get some arrows from the archery shop that somebody, didn't want, or like ask around. And a lot of times there's deals to be had on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
that's what, really I was, getting to, like, well, yes. And, obviously I work with ScentLock, and so I can, get discounted stuff for Tucker and, got it for Harper and then it passed down to Tucker. And, but don't let money stand in the way. Like, I was just at Walmart the other night and we found a flannel jacket, or not a flannel, a flannel jacket. It was really thick and fluffy, but it was red and black striped, and I'm like, this would be, it was like $25 and it was like kid sizes. And I'm like, this would be really good for Tucker in the woods. It's $25. Like, so don't think like, and that's another thing I think social media has just screwed up is like, I don't have the money to buy a $2,000 bow and another $5,000 in camo and another $1,000 in tree stands and trail cameras. And, that's a $10,000 investment. It doesn't have to be though.
No,
like there's been a whole lot of deer shot sitting on the ground with blue jeans and a flannel. Yeah. And, and I just tell people like, dude, there's some great bows out there. I mean, like Bear makes the legit, it's $400 fully set up. Yeah. Like sights, rest, stabilizer, quiver. Everything.
It's a great bow. I've shot it.
And Chrissy shot deer with it. Chrissy shot 2 big old does with it. So you don't have to spend a fortune to get into hunting.
Right. One of the things I think, like as mentors, like if you're looking for opportunities to like help people out, one of the things you can do is like look at your gear, look at all the stuff you got on the shelf, look at the old camo that you never use, or maybe the old bow that just sits there, and think about like, man, who could this help? It's just taking up space in my garage. It's like clutter that I'm not going to use.
Yeah.
And that could actually help somebody get into the woods.
Yeah.
Maybe it's old tree stands. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you want to keep safety in mind there.
Right.
Don't give somebody something that's rusted out or whatever. But like, if you've got some stuff and you're wanting to upgrade anyways, you probably can't sell it for much. It's like, man, just look for somebody you can help out and give that to.
I did hear a interesting point on that too, though. I don't remember who was talking, but they said, don't give it to them. Let them invest in it. Just like your uncle with mowing the yard.
Sure, exactly.
Let them be invested.
It meant more because I worked for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That also means you're going to be more invested in it. Like rather than just somebody like, oh yeah, that's
just
a bow that was given to me.
Give it. Yeah.
But if they have to work for it, they're invested. They'll be more apt to practice with it. They'll be more apt to take care of it. Like, Coda wanted to buy a bow from me. And I just said, what can you give me? And it was a nice bow. It was a, I easily could have sold it online for $400 or $500. And I said, what can you give me? And he said, well, I have $100. And I said, done. That's good. But now, like,
that's awesome.
Coda comes to me at church and he's like, hey, I was working on my bow last night, or I was doing this with my bow last night. He's invested.
Yeah.
Like he's
an owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He views that as his. It's special to him. He spent his hard-earned money on it.
Sure.
Jack Ledbetter, he called me and said, hey, can I buy a bow?
Oh, cool.
And I said, yeah. And he said, it was
that
so
dude is a hunting machine.
Yes. He said, this is what he said. He said, I have $147 to spend on the bow. And I said, well, you know what, Jack? Just so happens I've got one for sale for $147.
Oh, man.
And Grant, he knew the value of the bow, and he's like, dude, you don't have to, I'll help him with that. And I'm like, no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That's what he has to invest.
That's awesome.
He's going to be invested in it. That's what he wants. Let's do it.
I love that.
But Jack now, like, that's his bow, he spent his money on it.
That's great.
He's working with that bow now, like that's his bow.
Yeah.
And I can remember, dude, that piece of garbage that we spent $200 on, dude, I remember I spent more on accessories and strings than the bow was worth.
Like,
and I decked that bow out, and I spent good money on custom strings and upgrading sights, and because it was an investment. Like, this is what I care about now. Like,
and it got you hooked.
Yeah, it got me hooked, man.
It killed your.
That was a
buck.
Bear Charger, is what that was. And I still, dude, I loved that little bow. Hunted a lot with it, but yeah, man. So that's kind of. I just think we need to work on getting back to those days, man, and investing in people.
Guys, when it comes to hunting and being outdoors, I believe there's one product that I use more than anything. That's not my bow. That's not my boots. It's not my anything else other than a binocular harness. If I am outside doing anything outdoors, I've got a binocular harness on. Whether I'm shooting, whether I'm hanging tree stands, whether I'm out hiking, it doesn't matter. If I'm outdoors doing just about anything, I've always got my binocular harness. Alaskan Guide Creations does it, and does it very, very well. I've been using these now for about 8 years, and I absolutely love them. The new system with all the magnets are really good, really accessible, very customizable. Guys, if you're in the market for a new binocular harness, I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to check out Alaskan Guide Creations, because they are phenomenal.
One of the things you said earlier that kind of like made my thought path just kind of go down the trail is like, I think one of the things that happens nowadays sometimes is because of social media, because of like the view of hunting as like you have to kill the biggest, the baddest, like,
dude, I'm the king of 120s.
Well, here's what I'm saying is like, I think the saying is like, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that happens so often, even with like gear. Oh, it's like, you're like, man, like they have like, they're decked out in Sitka and have a brand new bow and have a brand new truck and have a, side by side and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And it's like, that is really cool. And if you can afford that and that, like, you're able to do that, I have nothing against that.
Yeah.
But if you have to use old, torn up camo that's faded and drive a rickety old beater car and, like you're using a used bow and whatever, like if you can get in the woods, like get proficient with your gear, obviously, like if you're shooting a bow, you need to be good with it.
Yeah.
But you can get really good with an older bow,
Yeah.
and like take what you can afford and get out in the woods. Like just go, like you're not going to kill them sitting at home looking at other people's posts on Instagram.
Yeah.
So just get out there and enjoy it, and don't always compare with others, because like comparison does steal joy.
Yeah.
I think, and be happy when if you get into archery and you shoot any deer with a bow, that's an accomplishment. Like
100%.
that is a great accomplishment. If it's a doe, awesome. If it's a fork and horn, great. If it's a 120 buck, I mean, be happy about that.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously like everybody has standards, and you want to, like sometimes you may want to hold out for a bigger buck, and that's great too, if that's your game, but
like
don't
kill stuff.
Just, I do too,
like to
dude.
kill stuff.
I hate eating tag soup.
One time Dad said, when are you going to kill something bigger? I said, when they come out before the 120 does. That's when I'll kill something bigger.
It's like,
but dude, I don't.
It's hard to hold off, man.
I just like to kill stuff,
standing
man.
out there. Yeah, it's to me, it's way more fun to go home with something in the back of your truck, even if it's smaller.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, no, I think advancements in technologies and the whole comparison but one thing changed my life, and I have not told him it changed my life yet, but Frank Noska, who is quite literally one of the best hunters the world has ever known,
right behind me, right?
Right behind you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He is one animal away now from killing his third Super Slam.
Oh my gosh.
So all 29 animals in North America, he is one animal away from doing that 3 times over now. Just an absolute stud. And I remember asking him one time, I said, how do you do it? Like, how do you even? And he said, well, dude, this is my life. Like,
yeah, that's what he lives and breathes for.
He said, I drive an 08 truck that I carry liability insurance on so that I can hunt more. And dude, we're talking, I mean, some of those sheep, 60 grand a sheep, to go kill. And he's like, I drive an 08 truck that I carry liability insurance on.
Yep.
I shoot an old bow. It's 2007. And this was in 2022.
Really?
He said, I shoot an old bow.
He's done all that with.
Yeah. Well, I actually think I saw a post recently and I think he bought a new one, but, he said, I shoot an old bow. I don't spend a lot of money on gear. I don't try to upgrade everything every year.
Yeah.
I would rather invest in my next elk hunt
in the experience
and more clothing and more
absolutely
gear and more.
100%.
He said I uprooted myself, from where I was born and raised to move to Alaska so that I can hunt more.
Yep.
So that I can have more opportunities.
Yeah.
I built my career as a pilot so that I can hunt different places more. I don't have to, I don't have to hire a brush plane to go in. I can fly my own in and hunt. Like, I've built my life so that I can do it.
Right.
And I just thought to myself, I'm like, man, there's a lot to be said about that. Like,
yeah,
it's my pet peeve when somebody says, well, I wish I could afford to go on an elk hunt. And I'm like, but you're wearing $5,000 in clothing.
Yeah.
Like, you could.
Or you have a $900 a month car payment.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that.
Or you smoke cigarettes. Like, do that. Like, I heard somebody say that one time. It was Aaron Snyder. He said, don't tell me you can't go on an elk hunt if you smoke cigarettes. Quit smoking cigarettes and put that $5, every 2 days in an account, and you'll be able to go on a bunch of hunts.
Yeah.
Like, but it's just, I mean, put up or shut up, dude. Like,
well, it's kind of back to the comparison thing. Is like, I think one of the sad realities is a lot of people spend so much time trying to like buy the newest, baddest, coolest gear. You buy all this gear, but then you can't afford to go on the hunt.
Yeah.
It's like, you've really shot yourself in the foot at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you defeated the goal like that you're set out for.
And, I just think you've bought into the lie of you have to have the gear to succeed.
Yeah. And
like, dude, I was telling somebody about the Bear Alaskan, which is a budget mid-level bow. It's like a $500 bow. And I'm like, dude, it is a shooter. They said, yeah, but it's a $500 bow. And I'm like, you're telling me you're too good for that bow? And I'm like, because Chuck Adams is killing new world records with that bow in Alaska.
Right. In a t-shirt.
In a t-shirt, in a cotton t-shirt. Like, and Chuck will say that. Chuck will say, like, yeah, I would rather spend $500 on a bow so I can spend more on the elk hunts,
sure,
bison hunts, whatever I want to go on. Like, I don't have to spend $2,000 to go kill those.
Yeah.
And I would rather invest less so I can hunt more.
Absolutely.
Like, and that's what it's all about, man.
Yep.
Like, yeah. I remember one time I said something about budgeting for hunting, and somebody like laughed at, like, somebody literally like was like, "Oh man, if my wife made me keep a budget for hunting, dude, that's, you know, I wear the pants in this relationship. I'll spend all the money I want on whatever I want." And I'm like, okay,
right.
But like, I want to literally put money away so that I can go on hunts. Like,
yeah, plan for it.
I want to plan for it. Like,
yeah,
I literally, like, if I was to show you my monthly budget, it says hunting, because I want to put back $50 a month. That way in 2 years I can go on an elk hunt.
Yep.
You know, I want to put back $100 so I can go on a all dad hunt, whatever it might be.
Yep.
I don't want to say, well, I wish I could go on that. Like,
sure.
I want to invest in it because this is what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So
really fun goal. Maybe the listeners could try something like this. If you have enough gear to get you in the woods right now, think about maybe trying to go one season or even 2 seasons without buying another new piece of gear and go on more hunts.
Yeah.
Like, I've actually, the reason I'm saying that is the last couple of years, I've tried really hard not to buy new hunting gear because I want to increase my opportunities to be in the woods.
Says the guy who just shot a Boone and Crockett antelope.
I don't think it's going to go Boone and Crockett, but
it's close.
It's a good one, dude. That was incredible. Yeah. And that experience, like, that was so much better than any, like, honestly, I spent less on that than I would have spent on buying a new set of camo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was so much, to me, like, the memories of that trip and the investment there, like, dude, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, dude. And that's what, like, we just live in such a fast paced, technology driven, got to have the newest and baddest. Like, but I've honestly always appreciated that about you. Like, and I remember one time you said something about, like, I don't remember the exact terminology, but like, if I trade a new bow every year, if I get a new bow every year, I don't know my equipment as well.
I'm being serious because Neil and I did some stuff together as a business, outdoor business for a while. And we were upgrading bows every single year. And I had gone from, like, when I was 12, I got that $20 bow. And then I saved up and I bought a Browning micro something youth bow. And I killed a bunch of deer with that bow. And then when I turned 15, Jared Vickers, who was my youth pastor and my
Vickers
mentor.
With one eye.
That's right. Because he actually lost his eye. He was selling a Matthews MQ32, which at that time was just a few years old. And it was, I mean, light years ahead of what I had been shooting. And it was an adult size bow, 70-pound draw. It was a little too long of a draw length for me, but I just lived with it. So when I was 15, I saved up and I bought that bow from him. And then I hunted with that until I bought that Z7 Extreme. So I hunted with that bow for like almost 10 years.
And then you hunted with the Z7 for 10 years.
Forever. Yeah. And so I was really in the pattern of, like, get your equipment, get really good with your equipment, know your stuff inside and out. And then when I went to, like, getting a new bow every year, it's like, well, you got to get your arrow set up. You got to retune everything. You got to, and a lot of times that means dumping more money and just time and getting comfortable with stuff. And I was finding, like, I wasn't as confident in my shooting and my equipment as I had been because I just didn't know my equipment as well.
Yeah.
And so there is, for me, like, I'm shooting the same bow that I've shot since 2017, I believe. So it's been quite a while, and it was a used bow then. I shoot can I say what I shoot?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I shoot a Matthews Halon 32.
Yeah.
Awesome bow. I shoot it really well. I love it. I've taken a lot of deer with it and I'm confident in it. And so honestly, like, it's gonna it's going to last me for a while, and I'm okay with that. Like,
Well, and I used to just be the worst of the worst. Like, I was a gear junkie through and through. I would literally, like, they would release a new sight, and I'd be like, I have to have that. And so I'd buy it, and like it was the middle of the rut, and I was trying to sight it in the night before.
I hate changing stuff in season, even if it's close to, like if it's July.
But it was literally,
I'm like,
it was like an addiction, dude.
Oh,
like,
I know,
because they make you think like this is going to help you so much.
This is going to change everything.
But the best thing you could ever do is just know your equipment.
Yeah,
and that's why, like, even if I change bows, I've shot the same sights for. And I don't mean the same style sight and I get a new one. Like,
no, it's the actual sight.
The actual same sight for 6 years. The React Trio Pro.
Yep.
I've shot the same sight.
On that dovetail, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I've shot that same sight for 5 years.
I can vouch for that. That's true.
And I have because even if I change bows, like I know that sight like the back of my hand.
Yep, exactly.
I know how it works. I know, every knob and every twist and every turn. But I used to just, it literally becomes an addiction that takes the joy away.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly trying to upgrade and change and have to have the newest and best. Like, and it's not just bows, dude. It's everything. Like,
oh, dude, the consumer mindset is like you're always chasing, but you never attain.
Yeah.
Like Proverbs talks about that. But it's like you always want the next newest thing. I call it like the iPhone culture, because it's like as soon as you get the newest, baddest iPhone that does like the best pictures you've ever seen, like the most incredible whatever,
a new one comes out.
Like 3 weeks later, they release a new one, and you're like, "Oh, this is crap! I hate this thing now. I want that. Like, I'm not going to be happy until I have that."
Well, and it's not, like I said, it's not just bows. I mean, your watch, like that. Well, first off, the Garmin Instinct is one of the best watches ever made.
You know, I have this watch.
Yeah,
because you sold it to me. Thanks, man. I like this one.
But like, a lot of guys get the Instinct, and they're like, "Oh, well, now they come out the Instinct 2. I have to upgrade." No, like. You don't have to. Sorry, Garmin. Everybody go upgrade your watch. I'm just kidding.
Garmin's rock.
They work just as well. Like there's no need to like. But we're living that world that just everything changes so quickly, and it really truly does take away the joy of the experience because you're trying to constantly upgrade and buy something new, and it's always, man. And like I seriously had an addiction, like to have to have the newest and best.
Well, it's fun. I mean, like, there's no doubt. Like, it's fun to get new stuff. And I am not against, like I said, if you can afford it, if you got the means, go for it. Like, I have no problem with that. But like, I love what you were saying. And I love what Bear Archery has done and has been committed to, is like keeping those entry level or even moderate level bows, like, an affordable price point where like beginners can actually, like, they can save up some money. They can buy a really quality bow that's going to shoot and it's going to last them.
When I said it on a podcast, like
fully set up some of those bows. It's I
said it on a podcast the other day, the new Alaskan XT is a budget bow and it comes with Picatinny mounts and IMS rest systems. And, you're like,
that's crazy.
That's stuff that's coming. You're paying for those, $3,000 on some other company's bows.
Yeah.
And here Bear's offering the integrated system for $600. Like,
it's super cool.
You don't have to spend a ton of money to get into this sport.
Yeah.
I do want to take a loop back though, because I mentioned your Garmin there. And that's something that I just think, like, there's so many products out there that, yes, they can help you hunt. Like, Garmin helps me hunt more successfully.
Oh, for sure.
And if you look at like the InReach system, like, yes, it lets me text my wife when I'm on the mountains. Like, that adds to the experience.
Yeah, I need one of those. Those are cool.
Yeah, and again, like, people think that's way out of reach. Like, an InReach Mini is $200, and I can text my wife in the mountains. Like,
they're on sale right now for Black Friday. I've been looking at them.
I would get one. Like, and it's not even, people think like, oh, that's for the mountains. Like, no, I keep it in my truck because even on the drive, to a mountain. Like,
oh yeah, you're without signal a lot of places.
Like, so if you're even going on a ski trip, like, and you break down, like, there's been so many times where you're driving down the road and you're like, I have no service.
We go to the national parks all the times when you're hiking, no service anywhere. And so like, to let our families know, like, hey, we're alive,
safe, we're here.
Okay.
This is where we're at. If anything does happen, absolutely. The messengers, in my opinion, it's invaluable. But Garmin is the example of one of those things that, like, yes, it adds to the experience. Like, I can save waypoints, I can save, sunrises and sunsets, and it helps with the experience. But it's also one of those things that if you follow too much on social media, you'll be thinking like, oh, I've got to buy the new Garmin, or I've got to buy the new, like you said, clothing. Like, while yes, it does add to the experience.
Oh yeah.
You can be just as successful without it. Like, you don't have to have this to hunt.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the disconnect is of like, yes, these products can help you enjoy the hunt more.
For sure.
It is enjoyable to be able to be on a 9-day hunt and text your family and say, hey, I'm safe. Love you guys. How is everything? Did Arkansas win last night? That's a sore subject right now. I texted Chrissy. I was on my way on a hunt and I said, hey, baby, just so you know, I have to pay for messages past a certain number, whatever. I've paid for 100 messages or whatever. So if we get past that, I've got to start paying. So if I send you like a message that just says like, hey, I'm safe, love you guys. Like, if you can tell it's just a pre-sent message, just don't text back, because it counts both ways. And literally, like, the first text message I sent was, what was the score of the game last night? Did we win? And she said, I thought you had to pay for all these. I'm like, yeah, but that's something I have to know.
Really
right
important to my safety and well-being right now.
I can't continue to hunt without that.
Yeah.
But that's just where the disconnect is of like, yes, once you start building equipment, like, these things can help you enjoy the hunt more.
Oh, for sure.
And the ideology of I have to have that to hunt.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have a bow, arrows, a release,
and some kind of clothing to cover you.
The accessories for that bow, and some kind of clothing.
Yeah.
You can literally start hunting. If you're listening to this and you've never hunted before, you can literally get out there and kill a deer for $200.
Yeah.
Like, buy a budget bow off eBay, a used bow off of Craigslist, whatever.
Yeah.
Go to Walmart and buy a flannel shirt that has some liner in it and go out and hunt. Like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend thousands of dollars.
And honestly, I think there is a joy in that, like, the simplicity of that, that honestly, like, it can't be replaced. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like, I think back to the joy of shooting that first, like, broken off spike buck in my, whatever hand-me-down camo stuff I had on, my little cheap bow. And like, I have probably been that excited again, but I don't know if I've ever been more excited than that.
Yeah.
Like, that was,
dude,
like,
I can remember I had a pair of passed down camo sweatpants. Like, sweatpants, like what you would wear to lounge around the house. Cotton sweatpants.
Yeah, boy.
You couldn't even tell it was camo anymore. It just looked like browns and tans.
All faded.
But I hunted ducks in those.
Yep.
I hunted deer in those.
I had a cotton sweatshirt, camo
pheasants,
sweatshirt,
quail,
yep.
Everything I was hunting, I wore those camo sweatpants.
Yep.
And dude, it didn't. Well, there was a duck hunting incident where I just had to use it for toilet paper. Those were gone, but
they're done for.
They were
Don't
done
want those
for.
back.
Didn't want to wash those.
Yeah.
But dude, like, yeah, and I just think that we as hunters are doing a poor job of conveying that, like, yes, fancy clothing, new tree stands, cellular trail cameras, Garmin products, like, they will make it more enjoyable for you, but you don't have to have it to go hunt.
Yeah, totally agree.
So that's where we're at, man. And I think we as hunters are doing a poor job, and we as the people selling the products, like, I understand you need sales, and I understand you need to market those products to make them think it's the newest. You have to have this. But I just want to encourage people, don't buy into that hype of I have to have that in order to hunt. And I can't go hunting unless, dude, I mean, there's some arrow setups out there, and I'm guilty of it too. Every arrow costs $30 that you're slinging because it's got a lighted nock and a, outsert, and your broadheads cost $120 for 3 of them. So you're launching, you're launching $70 in an animal every time you shoot. Like, again, yes, those products work and those products can help you.
Yeah.
But dude, I've also killed deer with arrows from Walmart that I got on the sale aisle for $2 an arrow.
Yep.
And you screw on a broadhead and shoot them. Like, so guys, don't buy into that. Be influential. Look for opportunities to change people's lives when it comes to hunting.
Man, introduce people to the woods. Like,
yeah,
it's you'll never regret doing that.
Right. Never. There's not an instance that it could ever happen. Like,
yeah,
you never will.
It pays back so huge. Like, I mean, I honestly, as excited as I was myself to get into hunting, like, help the few people that I've gotten to help, like, when they have success, that joy, it's overwhelming. I mean, it's
But influencers can create influencers.
for sure.
And
yeah, pass
dude,
it on.
You're literally directly responsible for anything that I do. Anybody that I influence can go back to that's because Adam influenced me, and that can go back to because Jared influenced you, and that can go back to because whoever influenced Jared.
Yeah.
Like, and so now Jared can literally say, because I invested in Adam and he was able to invest in Dylan, Dylan's able to invest in the Hunting 101 podcast.
Yep.
And dude, it will change. I mean this. If you've never seen somebody, dude, the emails that I get and they're like, I thank you so much for the podcast. I just killed my first deer.
Love it.
Oh,
that's so cool, dude.
There's nothing that compares to it.
Yeah,
and
dude.
Man, I just want to encourage you guys to be an influencer that creates influencers. Like,
are you Jared's hunting grandbaby?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I call him Papa Jared now.
Papa Jared.
Papa J with one eye. But yeah, I mean, like, you can literally be the person that changes somebody's life.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, Jared didn't know, hey, Adam needs this because of healing. You didn't know Dylan's going to make a career out of this. Like,
right.
You never know how you can change somebody's life just by being an influence to them.
It's true.
Do you remember that time we were back home for the holidays or something? We both live in Kansas. We're coming to you from Northwest Arkansas, the Ozarks, where I cut my teeth hunting in the Ozark Mountains. And we were back home, and I was like, dude, I just want to go hunt. And we went to public ground mountains up here.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time I ever heard somebody rattle. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? You're scaring every deer away in the history of the world now. And but it was just that, like, I will never forget. And you never thought about, I'm going to teach Dylan how to rattle here. You just thought, I'm going to rattle on a buck. But now every time I go to rattle, I'm like, I remember how Adam sounded when he did it. I remember what he did. I remember you were raking leaves with your feet and you were and I'm like, I remember that. Like, and I learned from that. And so it's not always just the big life lesson of like, this is how you hunt, but just going out with people and showing them like, hey, this is what I have found to work really well. And like, that was just a little lesson tucked into one hunt that I was like, when I go hunting and I rattle, I think back to that time every time I rattle.
That's cool. That's super cool.
And so, guys, just be influential. Quit being buttheads. Quit being selfish. Can I say that?
It's your podcast. I don't know.
Don't be buttheads. Take people hunting.
There you go.
Take a niece, a nephew, a neighborhood kid. Find somebody and just say, hey, would you like to try this? Because, dude, like, just my nephew Easton, like, they had a new archery park open in Northwest Arkansas where they live.
That's cool.
And Easton was there and saw people shooting. He said, this is just like Dodo. That's what my nieces and nephews call me. This is so cool. It's just like Dodo. And I'm like, I've never thought like, oh, I'm influencing Easton here.
Right.
He's 4. I was 3. Like, I never thought I'm influencing Easton here. My nephew Liam, he gets a bow and he's like, I want to be just like Uncle Adam and Uncle Dodo. Like, we're influencing these people. Like,
that's cool.
You don't have to be a social media influencer to change people's mindset about hunting. So, guys, get out there, be an influencer. And I don't mean like on social media. I don't mean, create you some big platform. I mean, just find people that you can invest in. But guys, it's coming up on my favorite season to hunt. I'm going to be spending most of December in Oklahoma. I love the late season. I love the predictability of deer when it's 10 degrees and dumping snow.
I'm very picky about the nonprofits that I will support. I look into them a lot. I don't just jump in and support anybody that says we're a nonprofit. I met a friend of mine. His name is Jim Mesh, and he runs a memorial fund, a scholarship in his brother's name, the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship. And what they do, they have a passion for getting kids involved in outdoors. So they host these events around the country to get kids introduced to hunting, but also to raise money for their scholarship fund, which is the John V. Mesh Scholarship. And what that is that's a scholarship that if any student is going into a field of conservation study, they can apply for this scholarship. And it's a substantial scholarship. That's another thing. If they say we're a nonprofit and we do all this and then they give, $1,000 scholarship, then you're like, well, where does the rest of the money go? But they give a very substantial scholarship to a student every year looking to go into a conservation field of study. So guys, maybe you are a student and you're studying some field of conservation. I would encourage you to apply for the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship. But also, I would encourage you, everybody, to support this nonprofit scholarship fund, whether it's through a one-time donation, a monthly donation, or attending one of their events, or buying one of the things they have on auction at these events. Support a company that's supporting our rights as hunters by furthering our conservation efforts by supporting students who are going into a conservation field of study. Guys, go check out the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship at johnvmesh.org.
So guys, get out there and hunt, enjoy hunting, but pass it on and help create new hunters that will create new hunters. Guys, thanks for listening. Y'all have a great week.